right, hello everyone and welcome to our James Beard Foundation Industry Support webinar. We're just going to wait a minute or so as we've opened up the waiting room and I can see folks filtering in. So we'll give it just about a minute and then we'll go ahead and get started with this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this webinar is 2021 Takeaways, Possibilities, and What's Next for Dining. All right, so we'll get started as people continue to filter in. My name is Ashley Koziak, and I am a director of programs here at the James Beard Foundation. And I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of our webinars before I hand it over to our CEO, Clare Reichenbach, who will moderate this panel today. So again, this is 2021 Takeaways, Possibilities, and What's Next for Dining. So if you've joined us for our webinars in the past, all of this upcoming information that I'm going to share right now will be very familiar to you. How this webinar works. This webinar is being recorded. You'll have access to it within a week. Those links live on openforgood.com, where you can find all of our past webinars. And like I said, within a week, you'll be able to find this past webinar as well. You can also sign up for future webinars there. So I do recommend checking out openforgood.com. Past webinar recordings live there, future webinar signups live there. If you have questions, we will get to questions as time allows, but I encourage you to submit them at any point throughout the webinar. You can submit those by looking at your screen and you'll see a little question icon. It looks like a little message box with a question mark in it. You'll be able to submit questions via writing. And like I said, submit those at any time during the webinar and we'll get to them at the end of the program and we'll get to as many as time allows. Finally, if you are having technical difficulties, you can use that same question function. My colleague Cecilia and I will be here online and we will do our best to help you out. Sometimes the best solution is to log out and log back in. Hopefully everyone can hear us crystal clear and we'll have no technical issues. But if you do run into any, like I said, just use that question icon and we will do our best to address them. So we're really excited to have a great list of speakers on our webinar today. We have Debby Soo, Melba Wilson, and Susan Feniger. And right now I'm going to hand it over to Clare Reichenbach, who, like I said, is the CEO of the James Beard Foundation, who will do a further introduction and is going to moderate the webinar today.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and welcome to everyone joining us this afternoon. So pleased you can for this important conversation. What is next for dining? After over a year of our industry being turned upside down by COVID, we're reflecting on how restaurants have pivoted and continue to adapt to this new landscape, an ever-changing landscape. In this collaborative webinar, co-hosted with OpenTable, we'll explore what the new world of dining might look like. We'll examine insights from both chefs and diners alike on what dining out in 2021 might entail, and look ahead to explore what trends may be here to stay. Before we get into the meat of the discussion, I have the great pleasure of introducing our phenomenally talented group of panelists this afternoon. I'll work directly across. So first of all, Susan Feniger, chef and owner, Socolo, Monte Carlo, Santa Monica, and Border Grill, LA and Las Vegas. Iconic culinarian, cookbook author, and entrepreneur, Susan Feniger may be best known for her modern Mexican concept, Border Grill, restaurants, trucks, and catering, which she runs with her business partner of more than 35 years, Mary Sue Milliken, who also sits on the James Beard board. Together, they opened City Cafe in the early 80s and forever changed LA's culinary landscape by introducing eclectic dishes from around the world. With great success across TV, radio, media, probably most famously for the Food Network show Two Hot Tamales, which was beloved, with nearly 400 episodes made. How phenomenal. In 2018, Susan and Mary Sue were named the recipients of the 4th annual Julia Child Award from the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and Culinary Arts, marking the first women to be honored. And this award is just one of many, many accolades and recognitions, including a James Beard Award. So we're delighted to have you, Susan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And our second chef on the panel this afternoon is Melba Wilson. owner of the eponymous Melba's restaurant in Harlem here in New York. Being born, bred and buttered in Harlem, Melba knew that she wanted to stay close to home so that she could nurture and provide an exquisite yet comfortable dining experience to the community that raised her. She served over 2 million guests via both the restaurant and her catering. And her catering business boasts a very extensive list of clients from Nike to Jay-Z. Today, she proudly represents her New York neighborhood as one of the most successful African-American women in the restaurant and catering business. She received rave reviews from across the board and countless awards and recognitions also. And you may well recognize her from any one of her numerous TV appearances on national news and cooking shows. And it's through her business, her profile, her passion, and her partnerships, she has been pivotal to the culinary renaissance of Harlem. And we're delighted to have you, Melba. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then finally on our panel, we have Debby Soo, CEO of OpenTable. Debby Soo is the CEO of OpenTable, bringing expertise in product-first commercialization, strategic partnerships, and international growth. She spent the past 10 years building Kayak's travel commercial team, establishing the APAC business, and then overseeing global business development for both Kayak and OpenTable. In addition to managing the company's revenue-generating activities and relationships with airlines, hotels, and car renters, Debby has worked in various roles across the business development and product marketing arena. So welcome, Debby, and thank you for your partnership with OpenTable.
Thank you.
So to kick us off, and by way of context, my first question is for Debby. Tell us a little bit about OpenTable's Dining Insights series. It's been running now for over a year. What inspired the series? What was the objective of it? And then maybe you could share how some of the perspective of diners has changed over the course of the series.
Sure. Well, I'm very happy to be here amongst this very renowned crowd. So thank you for having me. Well, we began the quarterly Diner Insights series in April of 2020, when most markets were in lockdown and restaurants were wondering how to keep the lights on. We have a wealth of global data from our expansive diner and restaurant communities, and we knew that one of the ways that we could help was to tap into the power of our network and to understand how diners were navigating dining out. So when we conducted the survey in April of 2020, we learned that ordering takeout once a week or more was up 72% as compared to pre-COVID, and I think that's a stat that no one finds surprising. Our perception of safety precautions was very different at the beginning of COVID compared to further into the pandemic and lockdowns. Diners actually ranked hand washing as the top safety measure at 93%, whereas only 55% of diners felt at that time that wearing a mask was extremely important. And when diners were thinking about eating out again, 72% ranked strict cleaning policies as extremely important, as opposed to only 37% who felt restaurant staff wearing PPE was extremely important. So that was in April. And I think if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the stats that I'm speaking about. Our second survey was conducted in July of 2020. So just, a few months after that first survey. And in July, if you can remember, in the summer, markets were slowly starting to reopen, especially as the weather was turning warmer and outdoor dining was really hitting its stride. Our restaurant partners were making decisions around hiring and resource allocation, and we wanted to provide insights on diner demand and expectations. We at OpenTable, of course, were determining the best way to help our restaurants drive revenue and connect diners through our product. And a lot of these insights actually helped form or inform our product directions. So by July, again, like 3 months after the April survey, a lot had changed. So across the US and Canada, people were already hungry to dine out again, with 25% reporting that they had returned to dining out at least once a week, as compared to pre-pandemic 30% ate out at that frequency. Masks and PPE now have become a priority. So whereas before it was, only 37% thought that was important, now it increased by 36%. So more than half of our people, our diners who were surveyed, thought that PPE and mask wearing were really, really important. Takeout and delivery continued to be really popular, but frequency of ordering dropped as markets reopened. And I think we're seeing that happening now as well as markets are reopening. And so those who ordered once a week or more decreased actually by 7%, but it still remained 14% higher than pre-COVID. And then, of course, as I mentioned, with the weather turning warmer, outdoor dining was all the rage. Diners felt and still feel safer outdoors. At that time, certain parts of the country, like the Northeast, were gearing up for outdoor dining in the colder months, which later proved to be a strong investment. And then lastly, diners were willing to spend more on dining out, and tips in particular, but were hesitant when it came to surcharges like a staff healthcare fee. So those are some of the trends that we saw through the data that the surveys we conducted. And again, it helped inform our own decisions on what to prioritize with our products and how best to support our restaurant partners.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Really fascinating to see those shifts over the year and some kind of positive indicators in terms of appetite to dine out. So then looking at it from the chef and restaurateur perspective, starting with you, Susan, over the course of the year, tell us about the choices and changes you have had to make operationally, and what are some of the innovations that you've brought to bear?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been certainly the interesting, challenging year where I think we've learned a ton. I mean, initially, when everything shut down, like, for example, at this restaurant, we had just opened 6 weeks before here in this location. And, I was very used to being hands-on in the restaurant, in the kitchen, walking the floor. So it was suddenly everything shut down. And I think when we opened, I think, as Debbie said, when things reopened, June and July, I mean, we have a very little outdoor area. So we scrambled to try to figure out, okay, how can we expand our outdoor areas? So we ended up doing that. We literally drove an hour away to find bales of hay that we could put outside to sort of block off the driveway. And which is what we did. We got like 70 bales of hay, and our landlord allowed us to put outside dining out there. And we took plants. Mary Sue's backyard is filled. Her husband is like, he thinks he's a farmer. And so we took tons of plants from there and just put them out on the patio. And so we shifted to outside dining for sure, way more space than we ever had. We started to do way more delivery. We started to do family meal kits, which was something we had never done before. I mean, we've done delivery, but family meal kits so people could feel like they were cooking at home. And also it's way different, to get tacos that are pre-made and hot. By, 5 hours later, even 3 hours later, they taste like crap. So the family meal kits are such an interesting development that happened over, I think, COVID, because people can take food home, eat it the next day, warm it up. It feels like you have a fresh cooked meal. So that's been great. And certainly as everybody, we spent tons of time the first 4 months on webinars, on, trying to understand the PPP. Should we try to get it? If we did try, how to get it? Then should we use it? And what would be forgiven? And, was business going to come back enough to be able to use it? And at Border Grill downtown, we ended up exploring. Initially, we ended up working with the city of Santa Monica and were introduced to the sort of the person who knew a lot about the clinicians in different clinics. And we initially started doing 3,000 meals a week for clinicians during April, May, and June from the kitchen, packing individual meals and delivering to clinics, probably, I think, 8 different clinics around the city. And that we got funded through World Central Kitchen. And then we ended up, I spent a ton of time, and Mary Sue did also, of trying to explore Los Angeles Housing Commission, and where there was so much need for feeding the homeless and then feeding seniors. So we ended up partnering a lot with FEMA and the Great Plates program and LAHSA, which is the Los Angeles Housing Committee. And now we're doing Out of Border Grill downtown, where we haven't reopened, but we are doing about 12,000 meals a week for seniors and homeless. And so
Amazing.
that's how we've been doing in LA and Vegas. We're open partially. I think it's 50% indoor and outdoor now. And Vegas is a little freer than Los Angeles is, but still, I think we've shifted everywhere in a big way.
Thank you, Susan. So operationally, obviously the move outside and having to establish a beautiful and compelling patio, the move to kind of meal kits specifically, and then all the work you've been doing in terms of community relief, which is so commendable. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
turning to you, Melba, just thinking about the last year and the different time slots that Debbie was referring to, and how things have changed as the year has unfurled. What's been your experience in terms of those operational shifts and anything around any innovations you want to talk to?
Well, ditto, ditto, and ditto. I totally echo everything that Debbie and Susan both said. Being the sole operator and owner of two small businesses, Melba's Restaurant, which has been in existence for 18 years, and Melba's Catering, it was definitely a shift for us. Melba's Mussels, which was designated to open March 2020, March 30th to be exact, which of course is still sitting there knocking on my door going, Melba, come on, when are you gonna open the doors? So it was, my middle name became Pivot. It was Melba Pivot Wilson. And, being a New Yorker, you kind of heard that, oh, it's coming and we're going to have to close our doors. But did we really think it was going to happen?
Oh my God, I just have to say, we were the exact same way. Our director of operations said, this is coming. It's like, yeah, okay.
We're the city that never sleeps, right? And we took a really long nap. But what was great was being able to get my 39 team members together. Even though I'm a sole owner and operator, there's no way I can do everything by myself. So my employees, they're my extended family members. So what I did March 15th, when we got word that we were to close our doors at 8 o'clock, no dinner service, sat the team down. My grandmother, who was from Hemingway, South Carolina, said, Melby, she used to call me Melby, not Melba, God gave you 2 ears so that you can listen twice as much as you speak. So it was important to see what we as a team thought we should do. And can I just tell you, that was extremely helpful. Together, our team members came up with some of the same things that Susan said. We changed our hours. Previously, for the past 17 years, we had been open from 5 to 11, Saturdays and Sundays from 10 to 11, and we decided to pivot, extend our operating hours. So we now open from 12 to 12, 7 days a week. We serve the same menu straight through, lunch, dinner, same menu. And this enabled us to keep more people working. When you have 12-hour shifts, we're able to keep more people working. Because for me, the problem was, how are my staff members going to pay their bills? That's what pulled at my heartstrings. I wasn't able to tell them how long this was going to last, when it was going to be over. Is it going to last for 2 months, 1 month, 2 weeks? And look, we're still in the middle of it, right? So that was my biggest concern, keeping everyone safe, healthy, and the ability for my team to be able to support and feed their families. One of the other things that we did was we offered meals in bulk packages. So feed a family of 4 for a discounted rate. Like Susan, I think all of us in the food and beverage industry, our main concern is we love making people happy through food. And when you're able to do that, you're able to bring about a comforting feeling. So even though it was a pandemic, we recognize the fact that you had frontline workers out there, nurses, doctors, police officers, firemen, and they were putting their lives on the line for us. What could we do? We could deliver meals. And that's what we did. We delivered thousands of meals, and not only did it feed them, but it also fed us. It fed our spirits, it fed our souls, and it made us feel that this was the one thing that we can do to make somebody else's day. One of the sad points was seeing food insecurities in our communities, in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Broke my heart to see restaurant workers, people that work around food day in and day out, not having a meal. So what we did was we organized sort of like a come and pick up with grocery bags, fill just for restaurant employees. No questions asked, no, just show up and pick up food to feed your family. So we did that several times. I can tell you that the New York City Hospitality Alliance, which I'm the president of, was so helpful. In a city that's first of all the hospitality capital of the world, New York City, being able to have a plethora of other restaurateurs to pick up the phone. What are you doing? How are you getting through? How can we help? How can you help us? That was invaluable. So having access was invaluable. And as Susan talked about the PPP didn't go to a lot of us. A lot of small businesses, which it was designated for small businesses. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't know many small businesses that have 500 employees. So being on the front line and stepping out and standing up for small businesses was extremely important to me. Look, the food and beverage industry, we are the second largest private employer in this country. And so for us, it's time for America to step up and recognize us. So that's why a bailout plan was so important, just like they did back in 2016, right? For the automobile industry. We employed more people than the automobile industry. So it was about taking a stance, stepping up, and getting things dismissed, like, the third-party delivery fees. We pivoted to takeout. Our catering, which is very profitable, or which was very profitable, that was totally cut out. So no one was doing big galas, big events. We have one client that we cater for every year that's 10,000 people. It was supposed to happen June 2nd or June 6th. Well, that didn't happen, obviously.
Very different profile of dining and consumer demand. And thank you for reiterating not only the social and cultural importance of the restaurant industry, but the economic value that we feel that's been getting some recognition now, and hopefully the new restaurant funds will be going to some of the smaller restaurants. So going back to you, Debbie, in terms of what you've been hearing from your consumers and how that maps over, and we've heard a lot about these pivots in terms of outdoor dining, restaurants who never thought they were going to move to delivery doing so, etc., and changing the kind of the complexion of that. The survey you conducted, and just this recently in this quarter, where you polled over 21,000 diners from across the US and Canada. Can you share some of the insights from that in terms of what consumers have actually been enthusiastic about in terms of some of these pivots and what they want to see continue once the world opens up again?
Sure, I'd love to answer that question, but I'm just listening to Susan and Melba talk. I'm just so inspired, and that's like what makes my job so cool and awesome. At OpenTable during the height of the pandemic, we waived our fees for a year. And it's exactly because of the stories that Melba and Susan are talking about, right? Like, it was not so fun for, a new coming CEO to see revenue drop the way it did. But the reality is, we're part of Booking Holdings, which is a publicly owned company. We have access to debt. We have, we have cash in the bank. And I know that a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses that we partner with don't have that. And so when we looked at what our restaurant partners, what Melba and the Susans of the world are going through, it just was so the right call. And it feels good to be listening to this here and saying, like, yes, like we did our little part in trying to make it a little bit easier to be running a restaurant during these perilous times. To go back to your question though, Claire, on what did we see in the last survey? So yes, we surveyed people in Q1, so a few months ago of 2021. And in this survey, thank goodness, it was very clear that recovery was on the horizon and people were becoming more comfortable eating out again, especially as vaccines were becoming more widely distributed. So 33% of diners said that they expect to return to their regular dining behavior starting in the first few months of 2021. Safety precautions have consistently remained a top priority. So even though, numbers, COVID cases are going down, people are still very much wanting, table spacing 6 feet apart, communicating what the cleaning policies are and who's wearing PPE and et cetera. In addition to staff safety, diners are also talking about and really caring about staff treatment. So 3 out of the 4 respondents on the survey said that they feel fair wages and benefits are important for restaurants to provide to their teams. So hearing Melba's story there is just, very much echoes that. And then the main thing about returning to dining, people want to reconnect at the table, at a restaurant with other people again, right? There's this, we are human beings, we're social animals. That connection, I think, has been so lacking during this pandemic. So actually 59% of the people we surveyed said they don't know if they want restaurants to keep, offering virtual cooking classes or events because they want to just get out there and connect with one another. And then lastly on this point, in terms of prepayments and deposits, 60% of the diners we surveyed said that they want restaurants to stop requiring a deposit or prepayment for a meal. But however, for those of us in the restaurant industry, we've seen cancellations and no-shows on the rise and how disruptive that can be for your businesses, especially now, as you're trying to forge through your P&L. So on OpenTable's part, we're just trying to really educate diners on how disruptive no-shows are and how negatively it can impact a restaurant's business.
Thank you, Debbie. So, Susan, returning to you, to what degree those insights that Debbie shared align and mesh with what you're seeing and experiencing? And I'm particularly interested in the staff treatment component and how that has maybe risen to people's agenda more highly than pre-pandemic. And if you're getting any sense of that from your diners, your clientele.
Well, it's such an interesting time because, yes, I think people are, anxious to get back. I just want to just what you said, Debbie, which is really interesting. There's so many people that no-show. And when you have a situation where you can't have people wait at the bar, you can't afford to overbook to cover for that. And so we try very hard when people make a reservation, to not overbook, which restaurants typically do overbook because there's a place to wait, they can hang out at the bar. So when people no-show, it really screws you up because we really try to allocate. We try not to limit the amount of time people can stay because I hate that in restaurants. I hate to be told I have to leave. And so the no-show situation is a problem. So that's one thing. But in terms of, I think, staffing, we addressed the same thing. Early on, we were very concerned with how is our staff going to get fed. So we did a very similar program where our staff initially when we closed down, of course, with all the restaurants, we opened up where all of our staff could come, and we got rid of everything that we had in our walk-ins and in the freezer so people could take it home and have boxes of groceries to get them started. And then we also did, once we reopened, had it like on Fridays where you could come and pick up a box of groceries, box of produce, or a meal for 4, so that there was a way to be able to sustain yourself during this time. We had to furlough people because we were completely closed down and we had no choice in that when we first initially happened. But I think what it did raise for so many people in our industry, and I think like the James Beard House and IRC was, I think, as Melba said, so helpful to learn about what other people were doing, to share information, to help us understand. So I think, and I think the the different series that OpenTable did, those were so educational that you couldn't help yourself to be on a number of them to help you understand what might be your next move. And it made very clear how vulnerable our staff is. And, you know, for many of our staff who could not get unemployment, that were at home, that couldn't get a job because there were no jobs available, and couldn't get unemployment, and didn't have health insurance, you know, so it really raised for us this awareness of like, we have to figure out either how to shift our industry into more equality, front of the house, back of the house, and how that can work. And can we make that shift? Culturally, it's such a screwed up way to be able to be, you know, working in our industry and so backwards. But, you know, how do you make that shift? But also, you know, how do we then help to cover some of, especially now when restaurants are suffering so much, how do we make sure our staff has health insurance? And, you know, this country is, I think, as Melba said, is supported by the hospitality industry. So to have so many people without health insurance is crazy. It's just craziness. So I think part of it is our responsibility to help figure that out, and how do we afford it, and how does the customer bear some of those expenses, and particularly for restaurants that, you know, that aren't as high end, that aren't charging as much. You know, we try to do what we can to have our prices not be too high, but how do you then supplement even more than we do already for health insurance? Because for someone to have to pay an additional $100 a month is a huge amount of their paycheck. And if it's going to mean that's going to feed their family, or they're going to have health insurance, they're going to feed their family. So it's very important, and we're looking at it really seriously of how can we make this change. And I think the industry's been trying to, but it's a challenge that we're looking at. I mean, to me, thank God we have this new administration, not to get political, but thank God we have it in order to be able to have a country that we can be proud of, or at least heading towards that. And I want to say that all through COVID, we always do fundraisers all the time, but I have so many cooking classes that I owe, from auctioning off for Biden-Harris, for the Georgia Senate, you know, of fundraising that we did for the LGBT Center and our culinary program. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna kill myself from having so many, but it shows you how powerful a voice we have out there to the public. And so we need the public support in a big way to be able to come back and go out. And yes, safety, I think, is the #1 issue still for our customers, without a doubt. So we're still, everybody's masked and shielded if they don't have vaccination. They're masked if they have been vaccinated.
Thank you, Susan. I think, you know, we've been talking about this as a unique time as the industry opens up again, that how do we address some of these inequities and vulnerabilities that have really been, the light has been shone on them, and what is the role of the consumer within that? Because as you say, the economic model as it stands within the restaurant industry, it's hard to really understand how it can accommodate all these very needed requirements for consumer health and welfare.
Well, hopefully the public's become a little bit more aware of what happens when the hospitality business shuts down, and how do they support.
Evident, yeah, and that's what's interested, Debbie, in terms of that data point, and be interesting to see if that, you know, if that grows over time. But Melba, moving to you in terms of some of those observations from Debbie. The staff treatment safety precautions we've talked around, this deep desire for human connection now that there's some relaxation and people just desperate to be with one another in person, and also the piece around kind of prepayments and moving away from that. Any reflections you have in terms of those insights that Debbie shared?
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, I have to thank Debbie and OpenTable. That's something that we talked about a lot at the Hospitality Alliance, waiving the fees. When you still have 100% of your rent due, 100% of your insurance, your electrical bill, your Con Ed, and all of the other, things that go into owning and operating a business. Having fees for OpenTable waived is a lifeline. And for some businesses, honestly, it made the difference between staying open and not staying open. And also, I know the James Beard Foundation, you guys had a series of events, and you also gave out grants. So it's things like that that keep our industry going. Whenever anyone is having a special event, who do they come to? Like Susan says, they come to the restaurant. You come to restaurant owners for gift certificates, for free food, for support, for use of the venue. And ultimately, we are essential to economic development in our communities. I opened up on 114th Street and 8th Avenue because it was one of the most notorious drug blocks in Harlem. I purposely chose that location because I wanted to give people in my community opportunities. There's one thing to talk about it, but there's another thing to be about it. 11-year-old kid, I don't want you to go down the street and sell drugs. Let me monitor your report card so that when you turn 14, you can come to Melba's and get a job washing dishes, answering the phone, bussing tables. But, that's what we do in the restaurant community. We provide opportunities. So it's essential that we remain open. And Debbie was talking about the need for human touch. The theaters are closed. The movie theaters, Broadway's closed. You can't go bowling. You can't go to a concert. Being able to sit down safely in a restaurant, outdoors first, right? June 22nd, outdoors opened up first, and then indoors reopened at 50% capacity, was everything. My family's from a very small town called Hemingway, South Carolina, and everything that we do is over food. It's over a good meal. Food is a common denominator that brings people together. And especially during a time where there's a major pandemic that's killing people by the droves, the opportunity to sit down comfortably at a table, share stories, heartaches, great things in our lives is definitely needed.
Yes, now more than ever. Thank you, Melba. So we talked about a lot of innovations that have been spurred over this last year, whether it's moving to outdoor dining, whether it was retail, the adoption of new technologies, contactless payments, etc. Debbie, when you've been consulting the diners, which ones have really resonated with them, and which ones do they want to see prevail going forward?
I don't think it's surprising what we found. So takeout and delivery, had a big part to play in helping restaurants during this time, but it also had a big part to play in helping us saving us from having to cook. I'm speaking for myself. It's just not gifted in this area. And so people, almost 91% of the diners surveyed said that they want to see takeout and delivery persist even once the pandemic is over. Outdoor dining, as we've been talking about, became the new norm. I mean, Susan, before the call started, was talking about how for one of her restaurants, they've taken over part of the driveway of the hotel for outdoor dining, and diners love it. So even on OpenTable side, the percentage of parties we sat outdoors increased 12x year over year. And the majority of people we surveyed said that dining outdoors seems like it's really low risk. And so 83% of the diners said that they want restaurants to keep increasing outdoor seating in the year ahead. And many of the restaurants we surveyed agrees as well. During this time, I don't have to tell you all, but restaurants really doubled down on technologies that will stand the test of time. You mentioned contactless pay. 71% of diners said that they want restaurants to keep offering contactless pay, ordering, or menus. I mean, like, let's just for 1 second imagine, like, I know in countries like China, scanning a QR code to look at a menu or paying has been the norm for many years, but we were very far from that in the US, right? If you had told me a year and a half ago that would be normal consumer or diner behavior to sit at a table and scan a QR code and look at a menu and perhaps even order and pay on your phone, that's unheard of. And the pandemic has really pushed us to adopt more restaurant tech features, and consumers are loving it and want that to stay. We also have heard from restaurants that websites and social media accounts are really critical. 94% of the restaurants we surveyed said that they rely on social media to communicate all of the rapidly changing updates that are happening with their business. And lastly, reservations are playing a critical role now more than ever to help restaurants manage expected capacity, guest flow, and also while guaranteeing diners can enjoy their restaurants safely. I mean, what we saw at OpenTable is restaurants who historically never even considered taking online reservations, it was almost taboo, are coming back to us and saying, yes, we need it. Like, especially with the capacity constraints, we need to be able to plan this out better. So that's been all really encouraging to see.
Thank you, Debbie. And so Melba, hearing that, it's interesting to see how the technology said that once felt a bit alien, that actually behavioral patterns change very quickly, and there's a very swift adoption of these different approaches. But these, new technologies come at a cost, etc. To what degree have you been able to adopt some of those tech innovations?
Okay, so have you ever been in church and you feel like the preacher is talking just to you? I'm listening to Debbie going, oh my God. How do you know that? It's like so me. Yeah, I'm one of those people, okay? I'd never had outdoor seating before. Never, ever, ever. QR codes, yeah, I heard people talk about those, but no, and contactless pay, no. Now, yes, yes, and yes. They've so made my life easier. Technology is not going anywhere. That's what I've learned during this pandemic. Having to cook via virtually, never thought I could do it. We go in the studio, right? Susan, we cook and we get the job done. Oh my God. My first cooking demo virtually was with Andrew Zimmern. So imagine, and we were cooking the same dish on television together, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. However, I'm now a master at it. So, yes. We always say that diamonds are formed during heat and pressure, right? Mm-hmm. I think that there's some definite gems that have come out of this extremely difficult time. And one is the ability to adapt. We were forced to adapt. And definitely QR codes are staying, contactless pay, and menus and payment are definitely a part of my everyday life and our everyday lives at Melba's. And our guests are loving it.
Thank you. Susan, what's been your experience in the same realm?
Well, I mean, same thing is we had to quickly shift to having, contactless pay, be able to have, on all the tables, we have QR code where they could look at the menu. Although I do still find lots of people want paper menus, which we hate because we have to throw them away afterwards. So it's a big waste of paper against everything we believe in. But we still do find people want that to be able to read a menu and see it. So we have both, and contactless pay for sure. I think it's, I really think that the restaurant business, we're so lucky because, I mean, my partner in life, my wife of 26 years is in the entertainment industry. That is not the industry I would want to be in if I were in during COVID, but our industry is so supportive. I mean, yes, it's hospitality, but there's such camaraderie in our industry across the country and support from, like we said, all of you guys, but just the industry itself. People were willing and offering to share information no matter what. And the work that got done by different organizations to help us understand what the hell was going on going forward has been extremely helpful, and I think brought the communities together. And it's brought, you know, we have an organization that we're involved with called Regarding Her, and it's raised awareness for women-owned business, you know, small businesses across Los Angeles that never have gotten recognized, that by, you know, by us, like people that I've met through this, that now have become friends and partners. And so the silver lining of that is I think we will continue to work together even stronger as a force. And so I think staying ahead of the curve, understanding health regulations as they change constantly. Constant is really the key word there, of, you know, what you can do one day to the next day. And I think, you know, having amazing employees and having a relationship with your family of people who work with you has been a critical part of our business for 40 years. And I believe that's what helped us to continue to survive during this. People were willing to do everything and anything, whether it was take orders, bus, answer the phone, you know, check people's temperatures at the door, you know, do dishes. So, and that I think comes from having people having trust in their bosses, their managers, and also having that relationship with the landlord, who hopefully for everybody has been as lucky as us, which I don't think they have, but just have had landlords who have been respectful and trying to work with us. And I think that will continue to go forward. So yeah, I mean, being able to be flexible, I think, has been the answer. Being flexible and running your business really tight and smart during COVID was critical.
Yeah, flexible, resilient, and truly focused, and just being so nimble. You're right, with the changing dynamics. And so you talked about health regulations, and given that outdoor dining has been so embraced, and people want to see it continue, to what degree is that a regulatory issue, and you're looking to your local legislators, or to what degree is that within your own jurisdiction? Maybe Melba, you were extolling the virtues of outdoor dining earlier. What are the conditions needed, or what needs to be in place for that to continue?
Well, here in New York, I'm on the mayor's Small Business Advisory Council. So Mayor de Blasio has ensured that while he is in office, that outdoor dining will continue. We've had continuous forums with all of the mayoral candidates, and that's something that we often bring up. And we talk about how important it is. Again, I've been in business for 18 years. I've never had outdoor dining. However, you know, when you think about outdoor dining in New York City, where there are over 6,000 rules and regulations for small businesses, which is absolutely insane within itself. But when you talk about outdoor dining means getting a lawyer to file your paperwork, getting an architect to do the renderings for outdoors, paying a fine. And here in New York, people normally apply, I'm sorry, paying a fee, not a fine. People normally apply in February, January, February, and they hope to get their outdoor dining permit by March, April, or May. So what the city did do was they streamlined the process. We were able to go online, submit the renderings ourselves, and literally within 6 minutes, for the first time in 18 years, we had outdoor dining. And I can tell you that it literally saved my business. To be able to open those doors on June 22nd and have 82 seats outdoor. And we were also blessed because David Rockwell, who just did the Oscars, yay, David, last night, formed a program called Dine Out NYC, where he went around to all 5 boroughs and donated, their entire team donated all the outdoor modules, all of the furniture, everything that we needed, you know, to operate outdoors. So I think people love al fresco dining, as we call it. And I definitely think that it's something that's here to stay. The bug is, we've been bitten by the bugs. It's not going anywhere.
The consumer for sure has. I know it feels like Europe outside, which is warms my heart. Susan, so we talked earlier on in terms of, you know, the considerations of the local estate planning, your neighbours, the hotel, etc. What confidence do you have that you'll be able to continue that critical bit of your business?
Well, that is really, that is a city question for sure, because same thing, we expand, without the outside dining, we would have never been able to get through this at all. I mean, and luckily we're spoiled by being in LA. And so weather, you know, for us, I mean, when it's, you know, 50 degrees, we have, you know, Uggs on and snow jackets, but, you know, I think the big question, I believe our landlord will allow us to keep half of his driveway. I think. It's the question is the city of LA and city of Santa Monica, because they're not permitted, they're not getting money. Like Melba said, they're not getting the money that they normally get from outside dining. The alcoholic beverage control has not permitted that to happen. So, you know, we have not started to go down that path to try to bug anybody, because we don't even want to raise any attention to it. We just want to like let it be as is. To me, the city needs to not even think about this for at least a year and a half. There's no way. The city's not, you know, yes, it's coming back, but it's not back. And so, you know, to think about starting to pay those kind of payments would be crazy for the city to do it. They're better off if restaurants stay open and get what they get through that than restaurants close, because they have to start paying extra fees for things. Yeah. So I don't know yet. We haven't, not, like I said, we're not digging into it, and we don't want to know what they have to say until they come to us.
So yeah, the request for continued flexibility there, but isn't it your conversation about your points about the landlord just underscore again how relationships have been so critical throughout this, in terms of the loyalty, the sticking with people, the showing flexibility, whether it's your team, your landlord, your consumer, and that loyalty being tested. I'm conscious of time and we're wrapping up. So it kind of, as we think about all this information and experience and the insights from all the different perspectives, would love to hear from you each individually in terms of what's the one piece of advice that you would give to chefs and restaurateurs or business owners, so thinking about the business side of things, who are trying to navigate this over, you know, over the next year. Debbie, what would be your one core piece of advice?
So as much as I would love everyone who's listening in on this call to be an OpenTable customer, and so even if you're not, this advice stands. For those of you who are using a table management or reservation system, make sure you're using it to its fullest capacity. All the bells and whistles. At OpenTable, there are things, you know, like all the QR codes, contactless pay, but also free online waitlist. And I have a whole host of those. So ping that account manager, whether it's OpenTable or someone else, and make sure they're walking you through all the things that software can offer you to be able to run your businesses as effectively and efficiently, and optimizing it as much as possible during this critical time. For those restaurants that are on OpenTable, if you can't reach that account manager, please reach out to me. My email is dsoo, D-S-O-O, @opentable.com, because absolutely during this time, you need to know everything we're offering to help make your lives easier during this time.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your personal email. That's good of you. But yes, how to really optimize that piece of the business.
Wrote it down.
Susan scribbled it down. You'll be hearing from her shortly. Melba, thinking about your advice about where people should invest, what they should be doubling down on, given the ongoing unknowns. From your perspective, what would you advise?
I would advise people in the food and beverage industry to be versatile, not to be rigid. I don't like the term front of the house, back of the house. I think we're all one house. And I think one thing that COVID has taught us was to work together as a team. As Susan said, you know, we had servers that used to make an incredible amount of money all of a sudden doing, you know, on tips, doing takeout. And, just be versatile. Be versatile. If you're used to working in the front of the house, then go in the back of the house and help out expediting, or learn about the sauces or what goes into preparing the different dishes. And the same thing with the back of the house. Come out to the front of the house and help, seat, help serve a table, help bus, help make some drinks. So I like, one of the things that we've learned is that it's one house. It's not back of the house. It's not front of the house. It's all one house. The more that you know, the more, I don't want to say important, but the more sellable that you'll be in this industry. And just don't forget to take a bite out of this industry and, put key ingredients into it. It's just like a cake, right? We want to put the right ingredients in. And what you do is when you put the right ingredients in, you get a great product. So be innovative. Don't be afraid to try new and different things, and embrace things that you may not have previously had experience with.
Thank you, Melba. Such a wonderful philosophy, and I applaud the one house concept indeed. And Susan, finally, your last words in terms of the core bit of advice you would give to someone in this industry as they look to invest and prioritize the next phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think diversifying your business model, so it's not all dependent on the same thing that you always do. So really diversifying, flexibility. I think, like Melba said, flexibility, I think we've always been flexible, but really now it just shows how flexible and quick you need to move. And so I think, diversifying your business model is really important. Flexibility. And I can't stress for people in business, to me, there is nothing more important than your relationship with your staff, your team, your relationship with your landlord. That relationships are what it's all about. And I think that's how people work together. They learn from each other. They make smart business decisions. They make mistakes and learn from them quickly. So I think, that's a big priority for people, especially people starting out in business. There'd been nothing more important for me, myself and Mary Sue, than our relationships in the industry over the years.
And they've borne fruit this last year, the most testing of years. Thank you for that. So we're coming to the top of the hour. Thank you all so much for such a rich debate. Debbie, thank you for sharing the OpenTable information and the insights, and thank you for all the support that your organization provides to the industry. And Susan and Melba, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences from the industry perspective, and thank you for being such shining lights within our industry and our community. Truly appreciated. What a great pleasure to connect with you all today. And for those who've joined us and know people who might enjoy this, this will be available online in a week or so. But I wish you all well and connect again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.